This is your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. I was diagnosed with CRPS, which is called chronic regional pain syndrome. And like I always say, it sounds fake, but it's not. But I was diagnosed with CRPS in the summer of 2017. Seems like forever ago. But health concerns of mine were already firmly in place prior to that diagnosis. We just couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with me, right? And then at that same time, it was 2 months after that diagnosis, I was in my backyard. I was temporarily in Austin, Texas. And unfortunately, I had to put my first dog I've ever had down in my backyard. And I was laying on a blanket with my other dogs and my, at this point, past dog. And all of a sudden, I felt this like bite on my ankle, my right ankle. And I didn't really know anything outside of I'm in Austin, Texas with somebody I don't love anymore because of some divorce. And my dog just died. And I was diagnosed with this really rare disease. It was just an uplifting kind of in October. But within that moment, my health declined significantly. And we thought it was my CRPS because people don't really know what CRPS and all the weird things that it causes. And it can act like you've been bit by a bunch of bugs, right? There wasn't really any connection between this rando bite and my health declining. So here we jet forward to last year in 2023, right towards the end of it. And I was diagnosed with Lyme disease and a multitude of co-infections with Lyme, an EBV viral load that is like going to a Tool concert, and H. pylori, and like a million other gross, creepy things going on in my body. And so now I'm faced with the same question that I had when I was diagnosed with CRPS. Well, what the fuck do I do now? Because I still don't have many answers for CRPS. And here I am 7 years into this, right? So how do I kill these nasty ass parasites that are having these late night parties and these early morning bar mitzvahs, keeping me up, and quite frankly, they're eating me alive. I mean, I quite literally, my sweetie and I will be sitting on the couch at night and I'll say, look at my legs right now. And we call it the wormy squirmies in my house. You will literally see like icky, weird, wormy crawl things going through the veins of my legs. It is so disgusting. Insert my guest today. She also has a story to tell about wormy, squirmy things, and it's nuts. Talk about parasites. I mean, she cares so much about this episode today. She literally turned off notifications whether or not her children were picked up, if they're cared for. So thank you for doing that for us today.
Hi, Lyndsay. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk about these puppies, right? So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my beautiful guest today, Vashti Kanahele.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here today.
Oh my gosh, we had to perform your name because it is such an interesting and beautiful name, but we had to get it right, you know? So Vashti is an author and functional medicine practitioner who literally exudes a profound passion for exploring diverse cultures, get ready, and embracing immersive experiences. Her triumph over Lyme disease, Hashimoto's, and complex chronic illnesses has fueled her determination to empower others on their healing journeys, which is why we're here. Her experiences have shaped her holistic approach to health and wellness. Her practice is dedicated to seeking the root causes of disease. So let's get down and dirty here. All right, I'm going to roll out the red carpet for you, babe. And I'd like to start talking about your husband for a second as a diplomat and how that led you to live as a foreign service spouse, travel abroad all over the world. God, your experiences are insane. And let's hop into your resilient parasitic journey.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah. So I recently wrote Passports and Parasites, which is the story of the last 15 years of my life. But to go just a little bit further back, I met my husband, Craig, in early 2003 early-ish, not early, but mid 2003. We were friends, and then we got together later. I did this crazy thing where I moved across the country to DC from Seattle on a whim. And here we are 15 years later, or like 20 years later now. But he is in the Foreign Service, and he's a special agent for the Diplomatic Security Service. And so as part of the diplomatic corps, we moved to different embassies and consulates, U.S. embassies and consulates around the world every 2 to 3 years, which led me to great adventures that a small town girl like myself never really foresaw myself living. And adventures and a lot of heartache and a lot of hardness, actually. But, you know, so it's been amazing and hard, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, okay. So your travels started when did they start? They pretty quickly when you guys got hooked up.
Yes, exactly. Well, it was like a little bit of time, actually. He had gone to Iraq, and I couldn't in 2004, 05. And I wasn't able to go with him at that time. We were dating, not married. And I had gone to Thailand to teach English and work in a health clinic. And so that's kind of like when my travel started. We came back to the States. And then in 2009, we went to Iraq. And that was my first time overseas as a Foreign Service spouse, was being literally like dropped into the middle of a war zone.
Yeah. And that sounds super easy and not stressful at all.
Not at all. No, I was like, we flew in from Amman, Jordan on a C-130, which is a military aircraft. And we landed and were like quickly escorted to a helicopter, a Black Hawk helicopter. And I remember I get in the jump seat and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like literally, what did I sign up for? You know, there's like a gunner, we're doing evasive maneuvers just to, make sure that ground fire isn't coming in. And, there I was.
Yeah, I'm reading your book, Passports and Parasites, right? Which I did. And I dog-eared every other page, of course, because that's how I love to read. And as you guys know, listen to the show, I read a lot in my sauna when I'm doing my meditation, blah, blah. I'm reading this going, I don't know how you did any of this. Like, you are nuts. And I say that with all of the love in my heart that I have, because I couldn't do this stuff. Not a chance. Not because I'm afraid, but I'm like, nope, that is not for me. There's way too much dust, for starters.
Lots of dust that would find its way in no matter what you did.
Everywhere. Yeah. And I'm such a clean freak. I can't even imagine what that would feel like and what that would be like. But the stressful environment that you guys were in all of the time, and all of these crazy, amazing places as well. But man, I've got to give you massive props for doing that. And also thanking you guys both for your service. But what in God's name do you do as a spouse there? I know what you did, but can you tell our listeners what you were doing?
Yeah, sure. The only way I could go was if I got hired to do a job that normally an officer would do, or something like that, a Foreign Service officer, because they were short-staffed. Spouses could apply, but you couldn't have school-aged children or anything like that, because they didn't want both parents going to a war zone with school-aged children or anything like that. So I applied for and received a job in the General Services Office. And not going to go into all of that, but the nitty-gritty there. So I was able to go and accompany him because I had a job. Like, if you didn't have a job, you're not going and like just hanging out in Baghdad. But
just another night in Baghdad.
Yeah, we weren't hanging out anyway. We were working 24/7, which is just par for the course. But it was the start of just chronic stress in my life, which you will see throughout the story of my life here. It was always this chronic stress, which I now know, I didn't really realize then, our driver is a driver of disease.
Yeah.
Really. And so we have a stressed society, which is no wonder that people are sicker and sicker and sicker. But, it was so stressful because we had incoming fire. My husband is a first responder, so he would go out. I would be sitting in the bathtub with my body armor on for like hours at a time, unsure how he was, where he was, and things like that. And we couldn't go anywhere. And that's another stressor, is like you're on a compound with people day after day after day. We would occasionally go over to this other compound for a different kind of dinner. Like just change it up a little bit. but there were no grocery stores. There was nowhere to go. I mean, it was the green zone, but it's still a war zone.
Yeah. And I can't imagine that war zones are epic places for you to try making babies, but this is what you two decided to do as well in the midst of all of this.
We decided it was time to start thinking about it. Really what would that look like? And we decided to hold on there because I would have to leave if we were pregnant. Obviously, being pregnant in a war zone is not ideal. So when we moved to Beirut, which was our next place that we went right after that, then we started, thinking, okay, we're going to have babies. And of course, naive, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. No, it was not easy.
How could that? It's not easy when you're like just chilling. I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to it. I can only speak to what all my friends of mine talk about, but it's not easy chilling in Los Angeles raising your kid without bombs going off around you on a compound with no food and plenty of dirt. Like, what is happening?
Yeah. So thankfully, Beirut was like less crazy than Baghdad. But we still had a lot of things because the Arab Spring was going on. My husband had to go to Syria, and there was a very, very dynamic situation there with him. And it was right before that I had suffered a miscarriage, and we didn't know why, but I was there thinking, gosh, I'm away from my best friend. I'm away from my mom. I have a good community here, but it was still so hard. But I have to give credit to the medical system in Lebanon, because I had a great doctor who figured out after a couple of miscarriages there, they did all the testing, which they don't generally do in the States, especially at that time in 2010, 11. They weren't testing for MTHFR and things like that they do more so now. But we just didn't know. And so it was very stressful. And Lebanon, while it was safer, like I said, we had the Arab Spring going on. Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, not a friend of the United States. They were always, part of our everyday lives. Just thinking about it, and just the dynamics of the country were very, very complex, which just added to the stress, So we were able to do tons of great travel. But again, it came back to this chronic stress state.
Mm-hmm. And so you're here, you're attempting to make babies. You end up making babies with not an easy road on that whole path. And we can go down nitty gritty paths, but there's so many. We all need passports in order to read your book. Because she goes everywhere with her children and her husband and all these people in the community and the things that she does. I mean, a really remarkable story in women in the places that you've been in a short span of time. I mean, big picture. You guys did a lot in a short span of time.
Yes.
So then
in those couple of years, it was 25 countries that we went to.
I was like, I don't even know where I am right now reading.
Yeah.
I'm like, I went back to the chapter. I'm like, I think I'm in Beirut. I don't even know. Because I was trying to follow the bouncing ball, but it was such an interesting story of everywhere you've gone and all of the places that you've seen and the people that you've come into and the cultures that you've been in and those that you immerse, which you guys did a very good job of immersing into these places and really giving it your all, which is amazing. I don't know how you would do it otherwise, other than not immersion, which I can't imagine to be very successful. But
yeah, people do that. But I mean, it's not as enjoyable. If I'm going to live somewhere, I want to be a part of it, right? Learn about the culture, learn some of the language, at least,
Yeah, a little bit.
Enjoy the food, enjoy the people and the culture.
Yeah. How do you order your wine? These are very important cultural conversations that we needed to be able to have. I needed 18 bottles of wine, which I don't drink anymore, but I needed that many reading your book. Only because I just wanted to be there with you to a certain extent. So, okay. So here we are, we're in all of these different crazy places and you're traveling around and you're just not feeling all that hot. And then let's start going into why, how, when you started not feeling all that great.
Sure. So after Beirut, we had a brief stint in the United States where my husband was in language training, and we were moving to Cambodia. So we moved to Cambodia. My oldest daughter was about 10 months at the time. We were like, we're not having any more kids. And then we quickly changed our mind and we're like, yeah, we're having another baby. So I was pregnant, in Phnom Penh, and I was taking, it was fall, because I was pregnant. I was taking my oldest daughter to preschool, and I, much like you, felt myself get a bug bite. And I thought,
all right.
well, that really hurt, but like, okay. So I dropped her off. I go home, and like days, weeks, months go by, and it's not healing.
Yeah.
And we're thinking, well, this is weird. Maybe it's because I'm pregnant. My immune system is really working hard here, you know, and it's not healing because of that. Fast forward, we moved to Bangkok briefly to have my daughter, Kate, because I had been diagnosed with latent factor 5, a blood clotting disorder. And it just seemed not wise to travel all the way back to the States, right, on an airplane, knowing that the clotting disorder create a worse thing, and Bangkok had really good medical care. So we moved to Bangkok, and I had Kate, and okay, we moved back to Phnom Penh after a couple of months. I'm feeling terrible, and I'm thinking, okay, I now have 2 kids, but I also have a nanny, because part of the reason, you know, living overseas, one of the benefits is, you know, you can often have what I consider luxuries, like having, you know, someone to help you at home, you know, something that really everybody should have, you know?
No kidding.
But knowing that I was coming from a real place of luxury there, but I wasn't feeling good. I think, okay, we also had some issues with my oldest daughter, Kira's health. So there were several things going on here, not to go really into it, because
no, but you did. You had, like I was saying, you needed a passport to go through the countries that you were already in. Like you needed passports to deal with the shit that you guys were dealing with.
Yeah, and there
Kira and Kate's health and all of that on top of yours and wars.
And so I'm thinking I need to go back to the States and try to figure out what's going on, because I am a huge consumer of like information and research, and so I'm researching. I'm like, this sounds kind of like Lyme, but I have this weird vibe. You know, everyone said that it's, you know, they can't determine what it is or whatever. So I left Cambodia just a few months early, but I took the girls with me. And so off I go to the States, and I had found a Lyme literate doctor in Seattle, which is where I'm originally from, is Washington State. And I meet with her, and she's like, yeah, it sounds like classic Lyme, but let's test. And sure enough, the tests come back, Lyme positive, reactivated EBV, which is mono for our listeners. And once you have a virus, it stays in you forever, which I think I knew, but hadn't really put together at that time. You know?
Yeah.
And so, and then co-infections and all of those things. And so I'm thinking, wow, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, Lyme in 2015, the way it was looked at was even different than it is now. And it's still sort of like, oh, that's not real or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I actually went back and went to doctors and went back through blood work. And I was actually diagnosed with Lyme disease prior to this, but a doctor never told me.
Yeah.
So we could have gotten ahead of this far before I actually was diagnosed. I actually had diagnosis like 6 years ago, but the doctor didn't tell me. For another episode, do I have a malpractice suit against this?
It's poor medicine at the very least, you know, because the downstream effect from that has been huge for you.
For all of us that have dealt with it, and hundreds of thousands of dollars of tests and pills and this and that. And we've been treating CRPS for these things. And the whole time, I don't even know if I have CRPS. Like in my brain, that is how screwed up I feel about this diagnosis, because all of the check marks go perfectly down for Lyme. Right. They do for CRPS too, but it's actually a little bit more on the Lyme and EBV and H. pylori and all these other gross things that are going on.
Right.
Why is that still not a focus with my doctor? Like, what is happening?
That is a huge question that you need answers to, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's so overwhelming, as you know, when you get that diagnosis, or any diagnosis like CRPS or EBV or anything that is like sort of out there in people's minds, right? Like, okay, that's just weird. So anyway, we started treating it. We did do a round of antibiotics, maybe a couple, but it had been so long at that point. You know, I had been bit almost a whole year before that. So it really didn't do much for me at that point. And then we started down the real naturopathic route of, you know, and honestly, Lyndsay, I've blocked out so much of that time. It's sort of hard to decide or even remember what all the things that we did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I had this little lunchbox full of all my supplements that I carried with me everywhere.
It's
right?
Like your little caboodle.
Yeah, exactly. A caboodle of sups, you know.
It's not
so
makeup
amazing.
anymore, ladies. It's supplements and the things that are eating us alive. Oh my God.
For sure. Oh my goodness.
Don't tell us this when we're in high school and college, by the way.
They don't. They're like, later you're going to use that for something else entirely.
So much for those frat boys. This is now what's going to maybe make you poop.
Yeah. Maybe. It was so overwhelming. I had a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old, and we were in Seattle, but we were moving to Texas. So I wasn't even staying with my care team in Seattle. And so it was the supplements, you know, and that can be so overwhelming for people on its own.
Sure.
Sticking with something that is like, you're going to take 20 of these a day and it has to be food or that anyway. So, you know, I hear people because this is what I do now, right? And so I was there in that moment. We moved to Texas, and that was the hardest place I have lived. And not because it's Texas, but I was so sick.
Yeah.
You know, I was.
It's not Baghdad or Beirut, guys. It's Texas. I have so many things to say, but I'm going to hold them because everybody knows what I'm thinking.
And we're thinking the same thing. But you know, and Beirut was honestly like one of my favorite places to live. Like I loved it. I would go back in a heartbeat. I mean, they're in hard times now, but I just loved it so much. But Texas was like, I was on my own. I didn't have, when you're overseas, you have a built-in community to some extent.
Sure.
You have your expats, you have your other American diplomats, you have diplomats from other missions around the world. So there's this like kind of community. I moved there. I didn't know anybody. Away again from my mom and my best friend, who are huge, you know, supporters in my life. And my husband was traveling all the time, and I'm there and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. My knees were so swollen. It would take me 5+ minutes to walk down the hallway to Kate's room to get her in the middle of the night. You know, it was just like the Lyme had gone into my joints. Which is quite, you know, normal. But for me, it was my knees, and I just could hardly function. And then one day I was like pushing the girls in the stroller, and I blacked out, and the stroller just rolled down into the street.
Right. Oh, that's right. I had a heart attack when I read that. I was like, ah!
Thank God there were no cars, but that was the wake up call. I called my mom. Well, I called my husband. He was in Turkey, I think. And I was like, this is not okay. Like, I'm not okay. And it took a lot for me to say that, because I'm always one to sort of push through, to keep going, to not ask for help, which is something I've learned is actually really good for you to do.
It is. I know nothing about what you're talking about at all.
So my mom and mother-in-law took turns coming and helping me be. And then my neighbor, Heather, was a huge, huge help to me during that time. So I had a small community there, but it was just hard because naturopathic medicine isn't really recognized in the state of Texas. So it was really hard to find someone that would do the kind of care that I required. I ended up finding these 2 nurses that were doing ozone therapy in a clinic. And that is where so beneficial to me was to do the ozone therapy just directly into my knees at that point. And ozone was something that then I started utilizing down for years when I was at home, you know, in the States. It was so beneficial to me. And so, yeah, that was really hard. That was the hardest. My mental health was in a tough spot. I just felt like I was never going to get better. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like I was doing a parasite cleanse. I almost said a passport cleanse. I was doing a parasite cleanse.
That too.
And I was like, I couldn't function. I'm like, how do I do this? I'm supposed to be a mom. I'm taking care of these kids and I can't even take care of myself. I cannot function.
Yeah.
The die-off symptoms, if people are listening, you understand those die-off symptoms can just bring you to your knees. Because these guys want to stay alive. They don't like it when we mess with them.
Yeah. And I've got so many questions for you in regards to the die off of that, but I would like to do that towards the end because I'm a little bit scared of what's going on in here and what's actually going to happen when all of the things that I'm supposed to be doing are going to be told to me that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now, but we're going to talk about that offline. But it's this invisible illness that I look great. You look great. I do the same thing. I put on all of the appearances. I always look great on Zoom. I do my thing. And then I turn off the camera and I am a totally different human being that is miserable and sad and depressed and scared and in pain and just like completely sleep deprived. And I don't have children. I mean, I have an older one.
Yeah.
He's just the spouse in the situation, but you know what I mean? Like I don't have children running around that I've got a Carter. I've got 2 little dogs and I got a sweetie. That's it. That's my life. But it's still, we have a lot of stress that comes into our world for sure. But managing this and not knowing what's going to come out of it all is what I'm actually a little bit concerned about because I have no idea what that looks like and I've Googled it and I don't like what I read. So I kind of stopped doing that.
I wouldn't Google. I always say,
don't click on images. Don't do it.
Don't go down the Google path if you can help it. But I understand that. I want to Google everything myself.
Yeah, I'm a researcher. Yeah.
I am too. And so it was just like this crazy weird time. And as we know, parasites, Lyme, EBV, they wreak havoc on our hormones. And so I was having terrible hormonal issues at that time as well, which is another, part of the story to read. But it just was a completely consuming illness.
Yeah.
And while I have like overcome it, I am like right now in full transparency in the middle of a flare, knees are swollen, things happen because when I allow myself to become stressed and overwork and do the things that are my natural type A personality things to do, this is what happens. Yeah. So it's something that while you can certainly, put it in remission, you always have to be doing those lifestyle practices. And that's really hard in the world that we live in.
It is. And from lifestyle, I know that you did a lot of dietary changes, which I've done. Everybody I know has, especially when you've dealt with Hashimoto's, which is something that deals with which is a thyroid condition. But within that, I'm gluten-free, I'm this free, I'm that free, I'm all of these things free. I don't drink hard alcohol anymore. I don't drink red wine anymore. I don't drink white wine anymore. I don't do this. I'm like, oh my God, what do I actually put in my body anymore? Because I'm either going to get an upset stomach or I'm going to puke. I'm always nauseous. My stomach's always a mess. So it's like, I have a really, really unfortunate conversation with food. Like I won't even watch shows about food. Like I can't even watch them, look at them. And my sweetie loves to watch all of them. And I'm like, how you don't like watching thrillers and horror films and you leave the room? You watching British baking show is the same thing as me having to watch, or me watching a British baking show is like you watching a horror film. So it's like, so this weird relationship has been built with food that I didn't intend to happen, but now it's here. And so I know I need to give my body nutrition. I've done all of the elimination diet was easy. I'm like, oh, okay. Yep. I don't have to do all this. Now adding things is my challenge. Mm-hmm. That is my biggest challenge because whatever is living inside me doesn't want anything inside of my stomach. It does not. It is like, nope, we're going to go ahead and let you know when we're ready to be fed. And we're going to let you know what that's going to be. And so far it's nothing. I know.
was going to say, do you get hungrier at night, because sometimes they are nocturnal?
Yeah. Yeah, I am hungry at night. I do a lot of, for pain, I only do cannabis and CBD. So I do not do any pain medication. I don't do opiates. I don't even take ibuprofen anymore, mostly just because of my stomach, or just don't do anything. My stomach was like, okay, that's enough of that. But yeah, it does. But I thought that a lot of that hunger was actually me just getting like the munchies, which is good because all of a sudden I'm in the refrigerator and I'm like snacking on stuff. And my sweetie's like, well, you're eating something right now. I'm like, I know, but I'm not supposed to eat an entire bag of Milano cookies right now.
Oh, yeah, they love sugar.
Yes, I know. So I'm craving sugar because I'm stoned, and now I'm not supposed to have sugar. I'm like, oh my God, help me, baby Jesus.
It's such a hard place to be because, parasites are not all the same either. Right?
Of course not. So, yeah.
And depending on what co-infections you have, things are different too. And to your point of something you said earlier, maybe, people need to know that they cross the blood-brain barrier.
Yes.
Species. And that really creates that's what you're talking about, the anxiety, the depression, these other things. Is Lyme can certainly do that because it's really taxing on you as well, right? And your mental
You're just
health.
Exhausted.
But a lot of these co-infections create these other dynamics that are, sort of mental health in nature because they can cross the blood-brain barrier. They are in our gut. We create most of our serotonin and, in our gut, and to some extent, percentage of our dopamine. So like when they're messing with that, neurotransmitters, hormones, everything becomes affected.
Yeah. And it's overwhelming. Yeah. I mean, the overwhelm. And in fact, last week I have not felt so overwhelmed. I don't even know if it had been like 15, 20 years. My overwhelm, I couldn't even form sentences. I was so overwhelmed, and I didn't even know what I was overwhelmed about. It was just this like innate sense that I couldn't get a grip on anything or anyone, even though I was doing all of the work. I was on all of the calls. I was doing all of the stuff for my clients or for this show or for my sweetie show or whatever. And I still was performing, but I couldn't. It was so weird. And it was really frightening because I didn't feel like I had the ability to like get a grip of myself. Like I didn't even know where to start. And I'm so glad that you brought up the blood-brain barrier, because I feel that way where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like a little nuts. Of course I'm a little nuts. We all know I am a little nuts. Okay. But that's why we love Lyndsay. But the not Lyndsay nuts is really scary because I don't know who that person is. I don't know how she thinks. I don't know why she thinks the way she does. I don't know why she grabs things out of the refrigerator the way she does or doesn't. I don't know why I order certain foods on a menu where I'm like, I would never eat that. And the food comes, of course I don't eat it. It's just, it's almost like it's taken over a little bit of who I am. And it is taxing, like you said, too. All of this stuff going on. I'm running a fucking food court in here all day long.
You're like, hey, you need to step away from the buffet.
My God, we are out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is so. And, when you have the invisible illness as well, and then all these things are happening to you, and then you're like, I can't even verbalize this, right? Because people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Yeah. You look fine. Like if I had a broken arm, they'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry about your broken arm.
Can I sign your cast? Yeah.
But when you look fine, but you're like, one, you're suffering pain, mental health, all of these things, it becomes even harder because what is that outlet? You don't really have an outlet. I mean, and our spouses, our partners, they can be great, but they also get tired.
Oh my God, exhausted. How could they not? Right. How could they not? I mean, my sweetie and my parents and my best friends and so on, their biggest thing is they can't help.
Right.
And it's just this like, but I want to. And, men, of course, are like, well, I can help solve this problem. Like, no, you can't. Just let me vent for just like a second.
Yeah.
But that wanting to help and that wanting to instill hope is wonderful. But that feeling of helplessness is so hard on them.
Yes.
And I'm trying really hard to thank you so much for everything that you're doing. It's not going unnoticed, like da 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 da, blah, 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 to make them feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy, because I know it's hard. I'm an only child. My mom and my dad are like, this is devastating. I hate this. My mom specifically really has a challenging time with me being in a wheelchair for part of my life. That's hard to watch your kid, decline like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, why am I getting worse, not getting better? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was part of like with the die-off, especially in that Texas time frame, I was like, I'm just deteriorating.
Yes.
And I'm supposed to be doing all of this money because insurance does not cover the care and the supplements that most people with Lyme disease, any sort of autoimmune, those kinds of things are not generally covered,
of course not.
And so all this money is going out and you're thinking, well, I'm not getting better. So why am I doing this?
Yep. And so we stop.
So we stop and then it doesn't get better.
Right. And we've got $17,000 of supplements in our caboodles. Yes. Glitter caboodle, pink caboodle, purple one. I've got like 20 different kinds from Target. Do they even sell caboodles anymore? If they do,
they do, because I was at Ulta the other day with my oldest and I was like, oh, I had this when I was young. And she's like, no.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. How long are your nails? And I don't like them. Okay. But I mean, it is unbelievable what we're faced with and how powerhouse women like you and myself who are type A, we get the job done. We've always been on top of everything. We've always been there for everyone. We take care of our shit. Our side of the street is always clean and we're on everybody else's side of the street, cleaning theirs too. We do all of that. Then you live under the conditions that you were while traveling. Talk about chronic stress compounding and compounding and compounding. And now you're a new mother. And you're living in Texas. I mean, honey.
Yeah, it was, and it was an election year, which is another story. And, it was like,
fun.
So terrible. And then we had like bid on our next post. We thought, I don't even remember where we thought we were going.
That's right. Yeah, you were bidding your leg. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought we were going to Liberia in West Africa. And so then they said, oh, there's no job there. We messed up. And by that time in the year, like all the better jobs are kind of gone. So Lagos, Nigeria was on the list. And we're like, okay, well, everybody knows that Lagos has a really bad reputation. And it's a mega city. I mean, there's like 25 million people that live there. And,
that's a big deal.
And so I was like, Craig was like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, okay, the school looks good. The international school looks good. Let's just go. And I have never had such a hard landing in my life. But I was also really sick and not like doing what I should have probably been doing, which was I should probably stay home.
Yeah. Self-care. What's that?
So,
I'm sorry.
Maybe
beep, 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 knocking on our door.
I go to Seattle. I continue to get better. But no, we went as a family and I was in a really bad place when we got there. I really struggled. And then we were able to move to a different apartment and all of this. And our house helper, Gladys, she helped me so tremendously. Like there are people that come into your life and they will always be a part of your life,
Yeah.
And it was at that, she helped me so much with the children and with like cooking. And like during this time, we came back to the States for Christmas. It must have been 2017. And I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like another diagnosis.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. Yeah.
Cool. I also lived in West Africa and now I need to be gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, and everything free. Okay. I was like freaking out. Like I really got that diagnosis like 36 hours before we left. And I ordered a book by Isabella Wentz about Hashimoto's. And thank God I was in Seattle because I could like literally see the guy bringing me, the delivery before we go to get on the airplane. And I'm like, oh, America, where everything is convenient.
Tackling the Amazon delivery guy.
Yeah. I'm like, give me the book. And I go back to Nigeria and I thought, I'm going to starve, which sounds really very dramatic considering where I was living. And
it's okay, girl.
I was very caught up in my own self at that time. But then also I could get US mail. So I want to also be transparent about that because not everybody can. And as diplomats, we can get mail. So it wasn't like I couldn't get Thrive Market or Amazon or something, but I was just thinking it's another hurdle.
Sure.
Another hill to climb. But Gladys, she helped me so much. We learned how to like use tiger nut, flour, other foods that are endemic to Nigeria and Africa in general, to really help make food. But I was able to also rest because I had that extra help, which so many people are lacking.
I know. I'm one of them. I know.
It's so helpful to have that person that's just there. And she was always one step ahead of me anyway. I could sing her praises all day. Needless to say, I did not starve. I figured it out.
You did not starve.
But it was hard.
Yeah.
And I was still not getting better. Even with all of that, like you said, it's easy to eliminate things. And then when you start bringing them back in, for me, I've been gluten-free for so many years now. And I do sometimes have cheese and things like that because it doesn't seem to affect me the worst. But soy is that thing that I know affects me. So that's part of what I do in my work with people is like, what are your specific triggers? Because yes, probably everyone with autoimmune and things should be gluten-free. But there are these other triggers too. So it's really figuring that out, what is causing this inflammation in your body. But I came back to the States because I was not feeling good. And we think about our environment to some extent. I had a great community there. So it wasn't that so much, but the air quality was terrible, like some of the worst in the world. And that was really affecting my health. And these are the things that we don't always necessarily.
Well, your respiratory health is kind of important.
Right. Yes. And I was constantly having respiratory issues, especially in the winter, because harmattan, which is a wind that blows across the Sahara, brings all the sand. And then you're just,
more dirt.
More dirt. You would love it so much. No. There are days you look at, you can't see anything because it's just like dirt, sand.
Nope.
So I came back to the US and I stayed with my best friend because she lives closer to my doctor than my mom and dad. And I did like a month of intense like nutrient IVs, ozone therapy, foot baths, all the things. And like my face was like poofed out. Like every time I would get like ozone, it looked like I had been in a fight, but we knew that we were like getting rid of that viral load,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But it was just so painful, so painful. And I was like, oh my God. But I was so glad I had that opportunity to come back and do that. And that's where I met Dr. Fox, who I now work with in his practice. And it was that healing mindset. It's so important. Like,
well, we don't give ourselves space to heal.
Ever.
That's it. If we don't have any time or anywhere to do it, because there's somebody in our space all the time. My new line in my house is my sweetie and both dogs are staring at me. I'm like, am I in the zoo? Like, am I a giraffe today? What am I? What do you guys need from me? Like, am I this entertaining? Like, they follow me around, both human and canine, all day. Am I this exciting? I mean, give me a break.
Absolutely, you are.
I don't want to be for like 2 hours a day. I don't want to be entertaining. I don't want anybody to fuck with me. I don't want anybody to look at me, talk to me, think about me, anything. Just 2 hours for me to just like nom out, gosh, we don't give ourselves, especially as women. Y'all are listening and and the men that are listening, that you are at a zoo every day with your women as well. Okay.
My dog is like that all day too.
We'll give them that. Like, I always have somebody in the bathroom with me. My little wiener dog. He's like, you're not going in without me, Mom. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
He gets a pass though because he's so damn cute. But the space for healing, for healing. If we don't create it, we're not going to heal.
No. And that's where I was really lucky to have help and to create that space for healing.
Yeah.
Because as a society, we're not allowed that. As women, we're not allowed that, specifically to your point, that you just said. And we're just taught to move to the next thing. And so you're not healing from your current illness, but you're also not healing from repressed things, feelings, other things that drive disease, our past experiences that drive these diseases. If we're not dealing with that, it's very difficult to heal, which writing this book required me to deal with all of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
There were things that I never wanted to think about again, things that were so hard in that moment, and then to write them repeatedly because, you know, you write, you edit again. But it was ultimately so healing.
Well, absolutely. The written word is incredible. Journaling. I mean, that's what they've said this forever, and I've done it since I was a little girl. So I was fortunate enough that I was pulled into journaling and writing from a very young age. So that comes innate with me. So no matter what, when I'm having a crappy whatever, I either get on my laptop and I just vomit whatever I want to, just stream of consciousness, print it, tear it, don't save it, whatever. I do a lot of that too. But also I have journals from when I was like, I don't even know, 10, 11 years old. Yeah. And I still have them, and I will never open them. And there's actually there's a point where I'm thinking, we just purchased a home, and so we're moving. And I'm like, is it time for me to just like take all of these journals from my whole life and just bring them to the beach and just burn them? Because I feel like that could be pretty cathartic. But that's for another day. But definitely. we need to be doing these things, guys, because the stuff that we suppress turns into disease. I mean, it just does. It does. Yeah.
And it's just more lingering stress.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. Because it's back here no matter what you think, if you think you're not thinking about it, you're freaking thinking about it.
100%.
Especially if you're a people pleaser, overachiever like myself over here. Yeah. What did I do wrong when I was 9? Yeah, let's do that. Let's mull over that for the next 7 hours, Lyndsay. That's going to do a lot of good for you.
The coulda, woulda, shoulda, man.
I know.
Always get
or
us.
did I? I'm sure I did. Those are always interesting as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so at the end of the day, you were able to get all of your parasitic fiascos into remission, which is great, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have to work on it. And I'll tell you, writing the book, while it was super therapeutic, really took me to the edge of that. And I've been in a flare probably since October.
Oh, all right. That's fair. Yeah.
So, I did that to myself, but I will come out of it. But yes, I did. It was the lifestyle, the diet, my doctor who listened. I felt heard. I had a healing mindset because of the way he was with me, which cannot be overstated.
Say it again.
Wait, that would require me to remember what I just said.
Okay, so it's not totally in remission, guys.
Exactly. No, I did. No, he heard me. He listened to me. I felt validated and seen. When you have an invisible illness, you don't feel seen. No. And a lot of medical providers don't believe it. They don't understand it. So then they push it to the side, push you to the side, make you feel crazy. And he did the exact opposite of that.
I love that. Because we do. I'm like, don't you think it sounds crazy when I go in? I'm like, well, I feel like I have a vibrator at the base of my skull that's constantly buzzing. I feel I have lava worms climbing through my skin. You can see them. Look, they're moving. I'm not dreaming it up. Like I have them on video. I'm like this. I'm not making this stuff up. And I kept getting the same thing. And mostly with a lot of male doctors when it came to body stuff, when it came to like feminine OBG kind of problems, men doctors were much better for me than women doctors. So it's just like kind of a strange thing. And because I think that a lot of women doctors in the OBG world, and we totally are not even talking about this, but they tend to be like, well, I have a vagina and I've never experienced anything like that before. So you must be dreaming it. I'm like, I'm not dreaming any of this, but okay. Thank you for your call. Yeah. I appreciate your time today. But the bottom line is, guys, we are the ones that hire our doctors. They don't hire us. So you get to choose. You don't like that person, walk out the fucking door and go find somebody else that works for you and keep doing it until we find the right one. That's what I'm on right now. Yeah. I am interviewing. They're not interviewing me. I go in and I'm like, if you don't think that you're able to even remotely get curious or give a shit about me the second I walk out of this door, then I'm not right for you. I want to be talked about at your dining room table tonight. Like that's what I would be doing. If I was somebody that was trying to care for me, I would be up trying to figure out how I could make Lyndsay feel better and get better. And instead, that's just not been the case. And that's why I'm here, because I'm going to freaking find it. I'm going to figure it out.
You are going to. And that's the thing, is advocating for yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? It's so hard, especially as women, to advocate for ourselves. We're taught to be less than, quiet, et cetera, et cetera. But you are in control of your body. You know, and I know that so many people are hampered by the system, the medical system that we are in currently, and having to deal with insurance and things like that. But you
especially here in the United States.
In the United States, yes. But you still have that opportunity to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, it is the only thing that we should be doing, because if we're not advocating for ourselves and our loved ones, then what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to get anywhere if we don't, because we just end up getting, we're just another piece of paper on their big stack on their desk of something else that they don't know. And they're like looking in their manuals. They're like, oh God, I don't know what the heck that was. That was weird. I've never heard about that. Fine. At least you're looking in a book and trying to figure something out.
Right. And that's where like conventional medicine is so good for trauma. We definitely need conventional medicine for so many things. And I don't mean like PTSD trauma.
No. I broke my leg in a car accident. Yeah, for sure.
And I need immediate help.
Heart attack, so on and so forth. Yes, these are very, very good things for us to use Western medicine for sure. Yes,
absolutely. But then so many, Western trained docs are hampered by time.
Of course.
Like the average the time you spend with the doctor is like 7 to 10 minutes or something, right? Like
I feel like that's even pushing it.
You're not going to figure it out. Whereas like you need to be able to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And so often that's when these things come out, is when you have that ability to talk and to be heard, and then to have someone who has the time to sit there and investigate what is at the root cause of this disease.
Yep. And that is really what it comes down to, is what is the root? Because if we don't know it, and it can be more than one thing, guys, too. Like for me, I can tell you, I wish I could prescribe the things I want to be able to prescribe myself to be able to do. Like, I've done enough research. I know this is the cause of this. I do, but I can't get anything from anybody I need to be able to give me this that I need. Right. Mm-hmm. Or we spend, $20,000 in order to get that done. And that's what we're doing. And not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to spend the kind of money that you and I are talking about. Supplements are not inexpensive. Functional medicine practitioners are not inexpensive. These tests that have to be run to find out that you have Lyme are expensive. These things add up. But if you know and value the importance and go, you know what, maybe I don't need to spend $350 at the bar tonight. Like that could go towards your Lyme and tick test, which is $500. So, you know what I mean? Like there are all these places where we say, oh, I don't have enough money to do that. But we do put our money into pockets and places that we shouldn't be. And we can divert some of that. And that's something that I had to really look at. I'm not a real shopper or anything like that, but I really was like, God, this stuff is so expensive. And it's like, but wait a second, Lyndsay, like, come on. Like, you don't have to do Stitch Fix this month. You could do it a different month. I winked at her because we have the same shirt. We're just not wearing it at the same time. I begged her to put it on. But yeah,
really cold.
It would have been, well, and I'm sweating like a pig because that's who I am. So, and that's for another show. But, all of these places where we can spend money in places that are so much more valuable for our health and our well-being than in other places that we can't. But also the self-care side of things, Go get your massage, important. Guys. Go to a day spa. Like, take care of yourself for a day. It's $200. I know it sounds like a lot. Save $200. Like, figure out a way to do some things for yourselves and along the way that's going to help calm down our central nervous system too, because I know that's a huge problem with us that are fight or flighters.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you just ramped up your nervous system.
Constant.
And when your nervous system is like that, it's really almost entirely impossible to heal.
Yeah. Great.
Sadly. But I mean,
thanks. All right. This episode with I'm not going to make it.
I'm just saying, we got to calm that nervous system. You could do 5 minutes of just sitting and deep breathing. You can do box breathing. You can do breathing exercises. That brings it down. You know what I mean?
We're in the process. Like I had mentioned, we just bought this house and we're putting an elevator in because of my body. And also he's aging and my parents are aging and what have you. So we want to make sure that we're safe. And we know that the elevator is going to take 20 seconds to go from the bottom floor to the first floor. So we did a timer on our phone to see if we could shut the fuck up for 20 seconds. It's a long time. Yeah.
I was like, I'm trying to be better with the self-care myself because it's just something that I tend to put
it's the last
aside, as so many of us do. And this morning I was like, I'm going to attend this like 30-minute meditation class. So I go and I sit down and I'm like, all right.
I'm looking around trying to figure out what to do with myself right now.
I'm like, well, there's a Barbie over here that Vashti.
No, back.
Take a breath and just be present here in this moment and allow myself to be quiet.
Yeah, so you went for 30 minutes. I mean, that's a long haul.
It is. But like also you can do 5. You can do 30 seconds.
Yeah, you build up to it too. And it's something that in my meditation practice that I've had to, I can tell when I'm out of whack a little bit more when I don't do my practice. I definitely can feel it from a sleep perspective, even just how I start my day. If I don't start it, I'm just kind of agitated at the world. If I just take a little bit of time to appreciate the world and be grateful for the things that I have, even in the midst of this shitstorm, I'm still really stoked about being alive and being on this planet, even though I'm having some hardships right now, but if you don't start that way, I can 100% tell how I approach the world on that day if I don't.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Sometimes I only do have 5 minutes and it shifts it all. Mm-hmm. So with all of this being said, which obviously I can talk to you for 1 billion years, where can we find you?
You can find me at VashtiKanahele.com.
Yeah, I'll put that in show notes because nobody knows how to spell her name.
Whoever spells it right gets a prize. No.
Ooh, I get it because I have it in front of me. Yes, VashtiKanahele.com. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And at Vashti Kanahele on Instagram. I've taken a little break, but I'm coming back and being more serious about being present for my community.
Well, you had to write a book and you had to do all the things. Yeah. And take care of you. So
exactly. And then my book is available at Barnes & Noble and at Amazon.
Yes, it's called Passports and Parasites, like I've talked about on this episode. It is awesome, epic, and beautiful. And thank you for sharing your story with me and all of your travels and all of your crazy shenanigans. And you've got 2 beautiful girls. Thank you for bringing more women into the world. I applaud you for that as well. Thank you, Craig, for giving those women to the world as well. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners before we kick these parasites down the road?
No, just thank you so much for listening. Healing is possible, and just never forget to advocate for yourself.
Amen, sister. You got that right. Thank you so much for your time with me. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy.
Thanks so much, Lyndsay. It's been great being here.
You are exclusively invited to share this Kill the Parasites and Create Space to Heal VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Do you know anybody that's living in and with all these crazy, creepy crawlies in their bodies that have these gut issues that are just sick and they're not sure why? Reach out to us. Reach out to me. And you know how to spell her name, don't you? We are here for you. Let's get to the heart of how we can help heal each other together and give each other the space to do so. We would love to connect you and hear your stories of strength and wisdom and provide a safe place for you to do so. Please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.